right, listen up, you little gremlins. Tonight, we're going full goblin mode with a live showcase of silly, scary stories from our wonderfully unhinged community. There's everything from actual horror to unhinged comedy to whatever fever dream you wrote at 3 a.m. and decided to post on Reddit. Tonight, Noah's going to be reading them to you live. No edits, no safety nets, absolutely no refunds. Let's get weird, everybody.
Bikini Bottom. Deep down within the crystal blue of the ocean, her beauty so magnifique. SpongeBob is jellyfishing with his best friend, Patrick Star. The gentle grasses of jellyfish fields echo with their gleeful laughter. But oh, qu'est-ce que c'est? What is this? A shadow approaches the home of our humble heroes, crackling with dark intent.
La 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 la. La 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 la. Huh?
SpongeBob paused mid-leap, bringing the game of leapfrog to an end as he landed on Patrick with a thud.
Patrick? What in the world is that?
Oh? Oh, I must have forgotten to put on deodorant again. Patrick replied, dusting himself off from the fall.
No, Patrick! Not your body odor! That!
He gestured towards the swirling mass of inky black, which lingered at the perimeter of jellyfish fields. Thick, heavy, and darker than the night itself. It oozed down to the ocean floor, coating the sand below in a viscous, choking sludge. At the edges of the turbulent cloud, the ooze bled rainbow hues into the water around it. Ooh, pretty. Patrick was entranced by the colors which danced out from within the shadow before them. He walked mindlessly towards the burgeoning abyss, reaching out to scoop the rainbow in his own 2 hands.
Patrick, no!
SpongeBob leapt forward and tackled Patrick, preventing him from putting his hands into the ooze. What? Oh? What happened? Patrick asked.
You were trying to touch that mysterious glob of inky sludge.
SpongeBob replied in exasperation. Oh, right, Patrick said before continuing. Say, it's getting kinda late, SpongeBob. I need to get home, or I'll miss the weather forecast for later tonight.
Why do we need to watch the weather for later tonight?
SpongeBob asked. So that I can know how to dress for when I'm asleep, Patrick said in a sage tone, and they began their walk home together. As they moved through the gathering darkness of a Bikini Bottom night, neither one were aware of the microscopic filament which bound poor Patrick to the shadow. It pulsed with malice, growing thicker with every step. They bid each other farewell and good night several times, much to the chagrin of Squidward.
Will you two nincompoops please keep it down? You're disrupting my beauty sleep.
He whined from the window.
Sorry, Squidward,
SpongeBob said. Yeah, sorry, Squidward, said Patrick.
I said, keep it down,
he said as he slammed shut the window. Oh, sorry, Squidward. Good night, Squidward, SpongeBob whispered. Good night, Squidward, Patrick whispered, and Squidward quietly raged himself to sleep. Nyonk! The sound of SpongeBob's foghorn alarm clock flung his blanket across the room, leaving him exposed to the still morning air. He shivered, moving to close the window in his bedroom when he heard something. It was a voice he knew well, but something had changed. The typically happy-go-lucky voice of Patrick now crept over SpongeBob's windowsill with despair and strain laced throughout. SpongeBob, SpongeBob, SpongeBob. He sounded like he had been repeating the name for so long that it had lost its meaning. The desperation and panic had bled out of the cry for help hours before it was heard.
Patrick, what's wrong? Sweet Neptune!
SpongeBob looked out the window to see Patrick protruding from the hole which was his home, leaving his rock roof turned over on its hinges. He had swollen to 7 times his usual size, with his pink skin taking on ever-shifting shades of black as the oily sludge swirled beneath.
Don't worry, Patrick. I'll call the doctor. He'll fix this.
The excitement had drawn the attention of Squidward, who, after a brief moment of horror at Patrick's appearance, decided this was not his problem and closed the window once more. The ambulance arrived within 10 minutes and the doctor was quick to share the news with SpongeBob. I'm afraid there's nothing I can do, the doctor called in his usual disaffected tone.
But doctor, there must be something.
SpongeBob cried rivers of tears, which rapidly flooded the living room of his pineapple home, bringing the doctor to open a window and drain the salty fluid. I'm moved by your emotional outburst, SpongeBob. Truly, I am. But I don't think it's that kind of story anymore.
What does this mean?
SpongeBob asked, drawing a blank look for a response. The doctor sped off, leaving his words echoing in the mind of the young sponge, almost as loudly as the wretched groaning of his tormented best friend. He lay in bed, desperately willing the positive thoughts to drown out the crushing reality.
Patrick will be fine. Crazy stuff like this happens all the time. I don't think it's that kind of story anymore. We've been through way worse than this, and everybody's always right as rain at the end.
I don't think it's that kind of story anymore.
Well, at least I'll always have you, Gary.
I don't think it's that kind of story anymore. SpongeBob awoke, determined to help his friend. He set out early to Jellyfish Fields in search of the shadow, hoping to find some hint towards an answer, but he found only a thin trail which lingered on the ocean floor, leading him directly back to Patrick. He shuffled off to work at the Krusty Krab with despair coiled like a serpent around his breaking heart. The patties smelled the same, the buns had the same number of sesame seeds, 11, and the customers had the same zeal for consumption in their hearts. SpongeBob, for his part, was in a daze. He could not understand how daily life could continue while one he loved so much lingered in agony.
Order up, Squidward,
he said flatly. Squidward turned sharply toward the sponge, but softened upon remembering the situation.
Thanks, Squidward. Thanks, SpongeBob.
He placed a cupped hand on his shoulder.
Hey, it's going to be alright. It always turns out alright in the...
I don't think it's that kind of story anymore. A young fish had been talking with his friend. SpongeBob, overhearing them, had leapt out to question the young fish.
What does that mean? Why would you say that? Do you think Patrick isn't going to be okay?
The question sprung out from under the tension SpongeBob had been feeling, leaving his mouth faster than he could process what he was saying.
We were talking about kelp wars, you weirdo. Get off of me.
The child shoved SpongeBob across the room, where he looked up from the floor into the sympathetic, tired eyes of Mr. Krabs.
I think you need to go home, lad. Get some rest.
Home was the last place he wanted to be. SpongeBob sat at his window as he had every night since the affliction struck, chatting with Patrick. The lungs of the starfish strained against the oily mass which pressed against them, making it painful and difficult for him to speak. He lay near catatonic as swells rose and rippled through his big fat belly, now bigger and fatter than ever before. By necessity, SpongeBob took the lead on most of the conversation.
SpongeBob?
Patrick wheezed out, interrupting SpongeBob's rant about the latest episode of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy.
What is it, Pat?
SpongeBob hadn't heard Patrick sound so alert in days.
What are we gonna do when I get better?
He asked. I don't think it's that kind of story anymore. SpongeBob tried his best not to hesitate, but the words of the doctor echoed loudly through his burdened mind, acting as a buffer against the words of comfort he wished to say. He told Patrick tales of jellyfishing and bubble blowing, but his best friend could read him like a picture book. Patrick had clocked the hesitation.
Sponge, my dad's old revolver.
He sucked water into his lungs with a long, high-pitched whine.
It's in the hidden compartment of my secret box. I want you to have it.
He groaned as the black mass within him stretched against his skin.
He used to tell me that the only things a star has in this life are his word and his...
Another spasm of the shadow sent waves of agony rolling through him.
His will. My body writhes despite how I pleaded to stop. I have been robbed of my will, left only with my word. SpongeBob, you kill me, please, please. It hurts so much. Pretty please.
What? Patrick, no! You are talking crazy. We are going to get through.
I don't think it's that kind of story anymore. SpongeBob screamed into the night and slammed the window closed, abandoning his friend to linger in darkness.
Ah!
SpongeBob bolted awake, unable to figure out what had sounded different than his alarm, until the haggard voice of Patrick split the early morning waters of Bikini Bottom once more. He bolted through the window, staring out in horror as Patrick's form was brutally distorted along each axis. His body bled the same rainbow hues they'd seen in jellyfish fields. Ichor, the color of starless night, oozed from his every pore as the poor starfish stretched and contorted wildly, the shadow within fighting to escape him.
Just hang on, Patrick! I'm coming!
SpongeBob yelled. The doctors had warned him that whatever had infected Patrick might be transmissible, but the young sponge no longer cared for his own safety. By the time that he had reached his front door, a convoy of trucks from the Bikini Bottom Department of Health had rolled up. Scene heroes in hazmat suits quickly moved in on the distorted starfish with smoky black steam pouring from within. SpongeBob fought desperately to be at his friend's side, catching a billy club to the face as the perimeter was brutally enforced. Patrick screamed for 30 minutes more and then grew still, leaving behind only a blackened, shivered, distorted husk of himself. The shadow hung in the waters over Conch Street for days. SpongeBob was trapped inside his pineapple home as cleanup efforts were ongoing. In the dark of his bedroom, he cried late into the night. Yonk! Even the alarm clock sounded pitiful. SpongeBob weakly batted at the clock, knocking a framed picture of Patrick into the waist-high ocean of his tears. He moved with panic in his blood, snatching up the photograph before it could be ruined by the salty water. Nearby, Gary floated through the room on SpongeBob's favorite recliner.
Meow?
Gary asked the question despite knowing SpongeBob had no answer.
I have no idea. Hopefully soon,
he replied to his beloved pet. The cleanup efforts had kept him indoors for 2 days. With no apparent progress made, the end was nowhere in sight. SpongeBob resigned himself to watching the crew in their hazmat suits. Today, they were making an attempt to clear the ooze with an explosive charge. 3, 2, 1. The countdown crackled out from the megaphone before a shockwave tore through Conch Street. The houses jumped 10 feet into the air before settling back in their place. Squidward's house had shifted in displeasure, with its feature forming a disapproving scowl.
Meow?
Gary interjected.
All right. Sorry, Gare.
SpongeBob mumbled, moving to prepare a bowl of slimy canned snail fruit for his friend. The blast had been ineffective, only causing the puddles of shadow to leap briefly into the air before returning to their shape and sending a shard of Patrick's rock home rocketing through the air. It collided with and tore a small hole through the suit of a cleanup member. SpongeBob glanced out of the window as he set down the bowl of snail food. The shadow was gone, along with the cleanup crew.
Hey, I guess it worked!
SpongeBob had forgotten his grief for the smallest of moments. He wished desperately to forget again. He was grateful for the opportunity to distract himself. The hustle and bustle of the Krusty Krab might allow him to lose some part of himself to routine. The camaraderie between chef and diner stealing the young sponge's heart against the howling winds of despair. Entering the establishment, which had been like a second home to him, SpongeBob felt himself hollowed out by each pair of fearful eyes he saw on the faces of the customers. He moved to the grill, hoping to busy himself with orders which never came. After the first 3 hours of waiting, he went to ask Mr. Krabs what was going on.
Haven't you seen the news, lad?
Mr. Krabs had clearly been crying. It's the end of the world.
Don't be expecting your paycheck.
He started blubbering again.
What are you talking about?
SpongeBob felt too broken to console his boss, no matter how much he wanted to. The grief still weighing too heavily on his soul.
See for yourself, lad.
He turned on the television, switching over to the local news. We interrupt this program for a very important news announcement. A fish bloated with black ooze has waddled into the Bikini Bottom city center. Residents report a foul odor similar to the one left behind by the remains of a local starfish,
who met with a terrible fate. Will this be the end of the world?
SpongeBob shattered. He swept himself into a dustpan before recombining the shards. The same horror which had struck through his heart was rearing back to strike again. He fled the Krusty Krab, leaving behind a cloud of bubbles as he went on his way to visit the only person who might be able to help. The tree dome stood darker than usual, or perhaps it was the very perception of the young sponge which had darkened. Sandy answered the door with a grim expression, leading SpongeBob to the picnic table where she filled his bowl with a thick, amber-colored interpretation of iced tea.
What can I do for you, SpongeBob?
Sandy sounded like she hadn't slept in days. The squirrel genius was twitchy and irritable.
Well, I was thinking since those cleanup guys were having such a hard time, maybe you could help them.
SpongeBob spoke the words, already aware of their futility.
I think they might be running out of ideas.
Sandy was silent for a moment. She stared at her friend as if he had cracked a bad joke.
SpongeBob, who do you think has been advising those yahoos? I've been the one telling them folks what might be worth trying the whole time. Now one of them clean up fellas is laying in the middle of Bikini Bottom, just waiting to die.
She spoke the whole sentence as a sigh before continuing.
Look, SpongeBob, I want to fix this nice and clean as much as anybody, but I'm not sure it's that kind of story anymore. You want my advice? Get out of here while the getting's still good.
The door of the tree dome airlock slammed shut behind him. The wheel which served as both lock and handle hesitated as if Sandy might have something more to say before clicking into place with finality. SpongeBob walked home in a daze, going up to his bedroom and going to sleep. Pionk. Another day's sunlight forced its way behind his eyelids, tearing him from the gentle oblivion of sleep. He shuffled aimlessly down the stairs, mindlessly flicking through channels until he landed on the news. There was to be an emergency meeting on what could be done to save the town, as the shadow had emerged and taken a new host overnight. SpongeBob felt that he, as one of the closest witnesses, had an obligation to attend.
Burn it! Bomb it! What if we took the shadow and pushed it somewhere else?
SpongeBob felt as if he was hearing the voice of a ghost at the last suggestion. Hours of deliberation followed, with Mr. Krabs as the most staunch proponent of what had been dubbed Operation Red Herring. The proposed operation was very simple. A sacrifice recently invaded by the shadow would be driven far enough from the city for the evil to be swept away in the tide. The arguments continued late into the night, with multiple bouts of violence instigated by Mr. Krabs against those who opposed Operation Red Herring. By morning, the time had come to select a sacrifice. The people of Bikini Bottom decided they would put in a vote. When the result was announced, Mr. Krabs came to regret the brutal violence which he had introduced to the discussion. The opposition had pulled their votes together, selecting Krabs' own daughter Pearl as their sacrifice. For the next 2 days, they treated her like a queen. They lavished her with exotic gifts and exquisite meals, things so extravagant that they drove the despair from Mr. Krabs' eyes for but a moment, as they transformed briefly into dollar signs. Pearl went on shopping sprees, drove fabulous boats, and even had a private show with Boys Who Cry. None of it helped to soothe her, but the people still insisted. They had become more interested in alleviating their own collective guilty conscience, stringing the girl along on a gaudy death march masquerading as a parade. The shadow had emerged from yet another ruined husk, and the day had come. Pearl was not any more ready than in days before. She wailed, shaking the ground beneath her as she tried to flee, only to be brought to ground by a net gun. When the time finally came, it took 20 members of Bikini Bottom PD to restrain the girl as they chained her to the bed of the truck. They drove her into the epicenter of what had been dubbed an emergence event. Pearl choked, screamed, and pleaded for mercy as she locked eyes on the ruined corpse of the cleanup crew member. The shadow stood suspended in fragments all around her, ready to invade her form and destroy her from within. Krabs had become apologetic, crying and blubbering for so long that its arms and legs had gone numb, followed quickly by his very mind. Krabs grabbed a shotgun and marched toward Bikini Bottom. He intercepted the truck carrying his daughter just off Conch Street, far too late. Pearl lay, already bloated to the very threshold of recognizability as the truck sped on its way. Krabs raised his shotgun, taking off the driver's head with a spray of iron. The truck careened off the road, crashing into the house of Squidward. Mr. Krabs, blind with rage, stalked up to the truck. He yanked the police fish from the passenger seat, casting him to the ground and ramming the barrel of the shotgun into his mouth. The fish tried to beg, tried to tell the furious crab that he had hurt his leg, but his words died around the cold steel of the gun as it tapped his uvula. The shot rang out, spraying grey matter across Squidward's anemones, then another as Mr. Krabs took his own life. The pellets of the shotgun shell bounced viciously within the crab's chitinous carapace, shredding flesh and organs as they went. Squidward was the first to find the scene, collapsing to his knees in shock at the carnage before registering Pearl's faint groaning and the faintest trace of black ichor radiating from where she lay in the back of the truck. His horror turned to panic as he realized the depth of the situation before them. SpongeBob! The squid pounded desperately at his neighbor's door. SpongeBob! Yes, Squidward? SpongeBob had answered the door in a widow's garb, clearly still mourning his beloved friend. SpongeBob, the truck carrying that thing. You mean Pearl? SpongeBob interrupted. Yes, the truck carrying Pearl just crashed into my house, SpongeBob. You'll have to help me get her out of here. He was nearly in tears as he spoke, but SpongeBob was fully there. His eyes sprayed tears forth like fire hydrants at the sight of Mr. Krabs' lifeless husk, propelling Squidward through the air and into the cab of the truck. SpongeBob climbed in, still sobbing just a moment later. Where do we go? He asked through the tears. Squidward had yet to consider that. I know. We'll take her to rock bottom. They won't even know she's there. They backed up, turned back onto the road, and sped off. They drove for what felt like hours as the girl chained to the bed of the truck made gurgling, groaning wails. As they undid the chains and cast her off into the darkness of the trench, they realized in horror that the emergence had already begun. They climbed back into the truck as quickly as they could, carefully picking their way through strands of sinuous black and sped toward Bikini Bottom. As they drove, the shadow rose high on the tide, drifting slowly but certainly back towards the small town. The neighbors prayed desperately for the cloud of oily death to change course, but it refused. They arrived home, knowing all was for naught. SpongeBob saw the despair wrought in his friend's eyes and sought to soothe him, even as the shadow drew nearer.
Cheer up, Squidward. We'll figure something out.
SpongeBob wished that he could believe his own blatant lies.
No, SpongeBob. I don't think it's that kind of story anymore.
Squidward grabbed Mr. Krabs' shotgun from the ground where it fell, pressed the barrel to his skull, and pulled the trigger as he finished the sentence. The cephalopod's brain matter stung in SpongeBob's eyes and tasted like wet rubber. He lay down there amidst the ruined bodies of people he'd loved and passed out. When he woke, the sun was shining, clams were chirping. He dug a piece of grey matter from the corner of his eye, flicking it away with a ugh. He stood up, knees aching, and looked around. There was no sign of the shadow in the morning sky. When he turned on the news, they said the disaster was over, but that wasn't really true. Sure, the monster had gone away, but the scars remained. SpongeBob had no job, no friends, and no trust left in his community. The cold way in which they'd chosen to sacrifice one of their own, and the malice behind the decision that it would be Pearl, it had all shaken him in a way he could not forget. For 10 years he lingered, filter feeding in the streets. He had been grateful to Mrs. Puff for taking Gary in after his home was foreclosed on, though she did not allow him to visit. His life had become completely bereft of joy. Stony Flavored was a rich flounder from the North Atlantic who had invested hugely in experimental medicines. It was one of his experiments which had slipped loose from the Deepwater Horizon facility, claiming the life of Patrick, Pearl, and the rest. His involvement of the tragedy was covered up, and of course he was never prosecuted. Flavored had been on a meteoric rise to political stardom in recent years, making frequent campaign stops in Bikini Bottom where he spoke of hope and prosperity. I believe in a world, he spoke in a practiced monotone, where fish of every shape and size can live their lives free of fear. On a nearby rooftop, SpongeBob moved the crosshairs over Flavored's heart and said,
Sorry, pal. I don't think it's that kind of story anymore.
So, first, what was your inspiration for the story? Well, my inspiration for this story was a bit of a deep-rooted personal trauma. I, along with many others, received a desperate request from a young man who told me he was starving. Starving for SpongeBob Creepypasta. This young person has become a wellspring of inspiration to me, encouraging me to write this story and immediately demanding upon completion of the story that I continue to refine my craft through the writing of a Five Nights at Freddy's story for their cousin's birthday. I've blocked this young person on at least 7 different accounts at this point. Can you talk a little bit about your writing process in general? I personally find that I have more fun with less structure. Kind of like Dathan said yesterday. Something about it just feels more satisfying when I'm letting my imagination run rather than outlining each detail and stuff. So, as always, I'm writing by the seat of my pants. How did your writing journey begin? I took a brief interest in writing and posting on No Sleep with a vomit emoji back in high school. There was a decade or so where I dropped writing completely, but my interest was reignited by Creepcast, like so many others here. What are some of your favorite authors, movies, and media? I'm a big Kubrick guy. I've watched The Shining over 100 times. I've already answered this one, so I'll just say that I really liked Smile 1 and 2. And where should people go to support you? I'm still just a no first publishing rights having ass dude posting to Reddit. I can't even do the Gen Z, the I guess I'll try. I'm still a no first publishing rights having dude posting to Reddit. Feel free to check out my stories and send me threats against my life or whatever. Don't do that. I hope everybody's enjoying the reading. I should really I should really pre-screen these more. Everyone give it up for Vivi. That was a really funny interview too.
My name is Jimmy Albert and I'm 23. I wouldn't call myself a high achiever. Mostly, I'm just tired. I work at a bookstore that specializes exclusively in nautical fiction. Yes, only nautical fiction. And I live in Port Hazard. Now, before I tell y'all about what's been bugging me, I'll give you some more detail on the city. Port Hazard is a place where strange things happen. Hell, the words strange and eccentric don't do this city justice. Our official mascot is a 7-foot-tall pigeon named Bartholomew. The main street is flooded with 3 inches of perfectly clear, odorless maple syrup every Tuesday. The local weather station regularly issues warnings for intermittent hailstorms that only pelt people who are feeling ambivalent about their career choices. Those pellets hurt, man. Now that you know the context, you'll understand that when the sleep paralysis started, I was mostly just irritated. Oh, great. I'd grumble internally, eyes wide open, staring at my bedroom ceiling. My body would be a solid block of lead. Just what I needed. Like I don't have enough stress wondering if the bookstore is finally going to replace the shelf that has a crab infestation. The recurring figure, the spectral visitor of my nocturnal prison, was an entity popularly known as the Hatman. He was exactly what his name implied, a towering, thin shadow defined only by the outline of a broad-brimmed fedora and a trench coat that seemed to absorb all available light. Most people described feeling pure primal terror when the Hatman materialized. I, however, found him vaguely pathetic. He never did anything, just stood there, leaning in a way that suggested either deep malice or an extremely bad back, and watched me. You know, if you're supposed to be some kind of horror, I thought one night, straining to wiggle my left big toe, at least fix your posture. That slouch is going to kill you. After 2 weeks of the Hatman's silent, judgmental presence, the initial novelty wore off. Sleep paralysis wasn't scary, it was just a massive inconvenience. I could barely move in the mornings and kept dropping stacks of Captain Ahab fanfiction at work. My boss, Jade, chewed me out after that. My patience, already thinner than the Hatman's silhouette, snapped. Enough, I muttered to my reflection one groggy Tuesday morning, noticing the dark circles under my eyes. I'm taking this to the professionals. In Port Hazard, professionals was a loose term. The only medical establishment I trusted, well, more like only one I dared approach, was the private practice of Dr. Cole. His clinic, located in a former lighthouse on the edge of the financial district, was named the Lighthouse of Humors and Mild Ailments. The waiting room was furnished exclusively with oversized wicker furniture, and the background music was a loop of a man vigorously tuning a very out-of-tune harp. There were no other patients, thankfully. After a 20-minute wait, during which I seriously considered stealing a copy of Moby Dick, The Early Years Abridged, from a nearby end table, a voice boomed, startling me upright. Ah, the young man with the strange familial genetics. Come in, quickly. Unlike the decaying passage of time, my schedule is very, very real. I walked into the office, craning my neck immediately. Dr. Cole was, to put it mildly, imposing. He was easily 7 feet tall, with a mass of white hair and a bow tie that rotated slowly. From what I remember him telling me, it was powered by a tiny brass mechanism. He wore a crisp, white lab coat, but instead of trousers, he wore Bermuda shorts and hiking boots. Dr. Cole didn't use a desk. He perched on a repurposed lifeguard chair, like the one you see at the top of those wooden towers, looking down at me with eyes that seemed to have personally seen several different geological eras. The rest of the room was filled with model trains. Jimmy Albert, the chart says, yes. Recent onset of nocturnal sensory deprivation with spectral accompaniment. The Hatman, yes? Dr. Cole said, his voice a deep baritone that rattled the window panes. Yeah, that's him. Just stands there, watching me. I need something to make him stop, I explained, trying to sound professional while avoiding looking at the rotating bow tie. Dr. Cole hummed, tilting his head. The classic don't like the spectral accompaniment dilemma. Well, we could try the standard, boring routine. Better sleep hygiene, reducing screen time, coming to terms with the fleeting nature of existence. He paused dramatically, adjusting his brass-rimmed spectacles. But that sounds dreadfully dull, doesn't it? Dreadfully, I agreed, relieved. I would rather die than reduce my screen time. Quite. No, for a port hazard problem, we need a port hazard solution. One must occasionally meet the chaos on its own terms. Dr. Cole hopped down from the chair, a movement that felt like a localized seismic event, and rummaged through a metal cabinet labeled slightly illegal pharmaceuticals. He pulled out a small, unlabeled pill bottle containing exactly 2 tablets of a deep, iridescent purple. They looked less like medicine and more like crystallized deep-sea plankton. Here we are, Dr. Cole announced, handing the bottle over. The Lucid Catalyst. Dosage 1 tablet 20 minutes before you plan on sleeping. It's an experimental compound, you understand. A cocktail of synthetic nootropics, a splash of comet dust, and a pinch of wishful thinking. I stared at the pills. Will this stop the paralysis? Dr. Cole's massive face split into a wide, genuinely unsettling grin. Stop it? Oh no, it won't stop the phenomenon, Jimmy. This city wouldn't permit such a mundane resolution. This, my boy, simply nullifies the peripheral, inconvenient factors of the phenomenon, specifically the part that keeps you glued to the mattress. He winked. The bow tie spun faster. It gives me mobility during the paralysis? I can move? You will be fully physically present in your state of spectral encounter. You may find your motor skills a touch rusty at first, but it will still be functional. Now get out of here. And remember, if you start seeing a mime arguing with a sentient traffic cone, that's a side effect and you need to drink a gallon of whole milk. I left the clinic, the small bottle of purple pills clutched in my hand. Instead of fear, a slow, hot ember of resentment began to glow in my gut. The Hatman had been stealing my nights, ruining my precious few hours of rest. I was tired of being a passive participant. That night, I decided that if the Hatman wasn't going to stop visiting, he was at least going to pay for a price for the inconvenience. I took one of the purple pills. It tasted like static electricity and old pennies. 20 minutes later, I fell asleep. A few hours after that, I was lying on my back. The familiar suffocating pressure of sleep paralysis descended upon me. The room grew cold, the air thickened, and there he was, the Hatman. He was materializing near the foot of my bed, his dark presence like a hole punched into reality. Immovable, paralyzed. I confirmed the familiar feeling. Then I felt a faint, tingling sensation in my right hand. I focused, visualizing my fingers clenching. My hand obeyed, clenching into a fist. I was in sleep paralysis, but I could move. The Hatman, having likely perfected his judging stance over several centuries, tilted his head slightly. If a shadow entity could look confused, this one did. A vicious grin spread across my face. I leveraged my elbow and, with an awkward, lurching effort, managed to sit up in bed. I pointed a slightly shaky finger at the dark figure. "Hey, asshole!" I growled, my voice thick with adrenaline and sleep deprivation. "You want to take up my nights? You gotta fucking earn it." I swung my legs over the side of the bed and stood up. My movements felt heavy and slightly delayed, like walking underwater, but it was better than nothing. The Hatman took a slow, single step back. I lunged. I wasn't graceful, but it covered the distance. I threw a wobbly right hook aimed right where a jaw would be. My fist connected. I knew it because my knuckles felt like they had just punched a block of solid ice wrapped in heavy velvet. The Hatman didn't fall, but he stumbled, the crisp line of his fedora blurring for a millisecond. The fight that followed was less an epic battle of good versus evil and more two extremely tired individuals trying to throw cinder blocks at each other underwater. I, fueled by 2 weeks of poor sleep and the strange purple medicine, was wild and desperate. The Hatman, taken completely by surprise, fought back with silent, unnervingly cold strikes that felt like getting hit with a frozen fish. It ended quickly. The Hatman wasn't a world-class brawler, but I was just an exhausted bookstore clerk. One powerful, silent, spectral uppercut clipped me on the jaw, and I hit the floor. The pain, while dull, was immediate. As I lay there, winded and thoroughly bruised, the Hatman paused. The asshole seemed to be contemplating his victory. Then, as quickly and silently as it had arrived, the shadow entity dissolved into the darkness. I lay on the floor for a full minute, panting, staring at the empty space where a transcendent demon had just been. I hauled myself up, my ribs aching and my jaw throbbing, and my ego absolutely destroyed. "Okay," I groaned, rubbing a rapidly forming knot on my forehead. "You rocked my shit, but I moved at least." I didn't manage to get much sleep after that. My adrenaline had spiked and then collapsed, leaving me an achy, nauseous mess. Plus, every time I tried to close my eyes, I kept seeing the crisp outline of that damn hat. The next morning, I looked like I had indeed lost the fight with a frozen fish. My left cheekbone was a spectacular shade of greenish blue and my lower lip was split. I called out of work at the nautical bookstore claiming I'd come down with a severe case of seasickness of the land. Jade bought it. Then I immediately headed back to the lighthouse of humors and mild ailments. The sound of the harp being tuned was louder this morning. The enormous wicker chairs seemed to sag in sympathy or maybe pity. I didn't even sit down, I just stood there waiting. Dr. Cole appeared immediately, gliding out from his office. He spotted me and his eyes immediately focused on my face. "Jimmy, my boy!" he boomed, gesturing dramatically toward my facial topography. The tiny brass motor on his bow tie audibly whirred as it rotated in the clinic's ambient light. "Goodness me! It seemed like You didn't just meet chaos on its own term, you tried to give it a robust hug. You look like you lost a staring contest with an approaching freight train. It was more of a fist fight with a really cold coat rack, doctor, I mumbled, gingerly, touching my swollen jaw. Look, the meds worked, technically. I could move, I could fight, but I lost and I got 0 minutes of actual sleep. I'm starting to think my sleep is more important than meeting chaos on its own terms. I see. Follow me, my boy. We'll help you yet. He led me to his office. Once we arrived, I tossed the bottle, which now contained only 1 remaining purple pill, onto his chair. I don't want to fight the Hatman, Dr. Cole. I want to sleep. Do you have anything at all? Boring, mundane, completely non-eccentric pill that will just knock me out for 8 hours. Dr. Cole sighed. Oh. A sound like air escaping a very large balloon. Picked up the bottle and examined the last iridescent pill with professional melancholy.
The sweet allure of the mundane, he murmured wistfully. A sound goal, Jimmy. A perfectly reasonable request for a completely unremarkable, non-haunted city.
He straightened up, his towering figure filling the space.
But I am afraid that I must deny you. We are experiencing a rather profound citywide shortage of all effective sophorics and sedative.
I blinked, waiting for the punchline. Shortage? Like a supply chain issue?
Worse, my friend, far worse. It's a port hazard issue, Dr. Cole said gravely. You see, the last shipment of our standard issue sleeping pill, the remarkably effective Snooze You Lose 5000, was intercepted just outside city limits by the infamous band of sentient plastic lawn flamingos.
The ones who've been stealing garden hoses?
The very same. They believed, quite incorrectly, that the molecular structure of the Snooze You Lose 5000 was the key to unlocking the secret of internal lawn care perfection. They stole the entire stock. And since the second most popular option, Mild Ease Dreamers, was recently recalled because it was discovered to cause users to spontaneously combust, we are left, as you young ones say, high and dry. He spread his enormous hands in a gesture of helpless resignation. Until the flamingos are subdued, or until the city's distributor finds an alternate supply that hasn't been transmogrified by the residual runoff from last week's fog event, all I have left for you is the lucid catalyst. My shoulders slumped. This was classic port hazard bureaucracy mixed with cosmic absurdity. I couldn't even be mad. It was just how things worked here. No reliable sleep aid exists because magical garden pests stole it. So I'm stuck with the fight-inducing purple vitamins, I said flatly. Dr. Cole beamed. You are stuck with the potential for glorious mobile participation in your own nightmare, Jimmy. Think of it as a test. You have only 1 pill left. Use it wisely, or perhaps foolishly. Foolishness often leads to the most compelling tales. I took the bottle. The last pill felt heavy inside. I thanked him, walked back into the daylight, and I immediately saw a mime arguing with a traffic cone about the definition of yield. I wrote a mental note to grab some milk on the way home. Unfortunately, the reality was crushing. I needed sleep, and the only way to get a restful night now was to somehow beat the Hatman into submission so thoroughly that he decided my apartment was no longer worth the hassle. I couldn't do it alone. The time for professionalism was over. The time for family was now. I pulled out my phone and dialed the one person I knew who would love
the idea of inflicting violence on the silent shadow man. "Frank," I said when he picked up. "It's Jimmy. I need you to drive to Port Hazard and bring the bat." The phone line crackled. Frank's voice, a gravelly sound that usually preceded the lifting of something extremely heavy, answered.
"Jimmy, what is it? I'm busy."
Frank was never not busy. He was perpetually occupied with tasks like replacing the engine of a decommissioned tank, or perhaps wrestling a particularly stubborn gorilla. He was the complete opposite of me. Where I was a pale, anxious clerk, Frank was built like a brick shithouse made for aggression. He was 8 years older, and his idea of casual attire was a ripped denim vest and tactical boots. "I'm not well, Frank. I'm covered in bruises and I need your help," I said, wincing as I spoke.
"Bruises? What happened? Did Bartholomew finally corner you?"
he asked, referring to the city's giant pigeon mascot. "Worse. It's the Hatman. Sleep paralysis. Except I can move now, thanks to some weird doctor. Tried to fight him last night. I lost. Badly. I need backup, and I need you to split the last of these purple pills with me tonight." There was a long silence from him. I could hear a sound like heavy steel chains rattling, followed by what might have been a small, muffled explosion.
"A shadow demon that wears a hat,"
Frank repeated slowly, the way a lion might contemplate a particularly juicy gazelle.
"You're telling me there is a literal, tangible creature that exists purely to be intimidating, and you can physically interact with it and it fights back?"
"Yes, he's tough, Frank. He's cold and silent, and he uses spectral uppercuts."
"Spectral uppercuts."
There was a sound of something large dropping.
"He's in for a treat then. Where are you? What time?"
This was the beautiful part. This was why I called Frank. Frank didn't question the cosmic or the eccentric. He was just in the fight for the love of the game. Midnight, my apartment, and Frank, I only have one pill left. We have to split it. Are you sure you're up for this? It's going to hurt.
"Hurt?"
Frank let out a rattling, phlegmy laugh that sounded like ball bearings in a dryer.
"Oh, Jimmy, you forgot my superpower. You've been so wrapped up in nautical fiction you forgot the family lore."
The lore that you used to bench press refrigerators?
"No, you idiot. The good one. The medical one."
Frank's voice dropped to a conspiratorial yet loud whisper.
"I have congenital insensitivity to pain, remember? I could get hit by a truck full of rabid badgers and I won't feel a thing. This is literally the perfect opponent for me, plus..."
Frank paused for dramatic effect, and I knew what was coming.
"Plus,"
he continued, his voice rising,
"I've been trying a new supplement stack. I'm currently operating at about 60% pure, unfiltered roid rage. That motherfucker's silent brooding is about to get a very loud, very angry wake-up call."
My chest swelled with relieved pride. This was better than any sleep aid. Perfect, Frank. Just perfect. I'll see you around 11. And seriously, don't forget the bat. Maybe bring something else too. We need maximum impact.
"The bat is in the truck. I also have a tire iron and maybe some brass knuckles. See you soon, nautical nerd."
He hung up before I could object to the nautical nerd comment. Whatever. Frank would bring his aluminum bat, a relic from his brief, fiery career as a semi-pro softball player before he got banned for beating up the opposing team. I needed something equally blunt and effective. something that represented my own unique blend of domestic exhaustion. I walked into the kitchen and grabbed my weapon, the heavy, slightly battered cast iron frying pan. It was perfectly weighed, and it still had a faint scent of the scrambled eggs I'd ruined this morning. Perfect. By 11:30 p.m., Frank's truck, a lifted, mud-splattered monstrosity that looked like it ate smaller vehicles for breakfast, came barreling down my street. Frank emerged, a giant shadow himself, far thicker and more solid than the Hatman could ever dream of being. He was wearing a faded Doom t-shirt and jeans and was gripping the aluminum bat so hard that he almost crushed it.
All right, Squirt,
Frank grunted, kicking my apartment door shut behind him.
walk me through the plan. Where does this trench coat wearing freak materialize?
By the bed, I said, holding up the frying pan. We take the pill, we wait for the paralysis to set in, and then we just beat the absolute shit out of him until he decides to haunt the guy who manages the maple syrup reserves instead. Frank grinned, a wide, challenging expression that somehow managed to be both terrifying and reassuring.
Sounds like the best night I've had in months.
I carefully split the last purple pill down the middle with a kitchen knife and handed Frank his half. This will be weird, Frank. You're going to feel stuck, but then you can move. It's a very heavy feeling. Frank tossed the purple sliver into his mouth and swallowed it with a gulp of water.
I spent an hour in a sensory deprivation tank last year just to see if I could make myself feel claustrophobic. Bring on the weird.
We lay on my bed with the light shut off. Frank held his bat, resting on his shoulder like an executioner. I gripped the frying pan. The grease smell comforting in its familiarity. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight. I felt the pressure descend first. That leaden, familiar weight. My limbs locked down. I was floating in the cold, thick air of pure inability. Then, the Hatman arrived. He was in his usual spot, tall, dark, and utterly motionless. Frank was next. I heard the sudden, sharp intake of his breath as the paralysis hit him. But a moment later, I heard something else. A low, menacing rumble came from Frank's chest. I pushed myself up, the pill's power kicking in, turning the paralysis into slow, grinding mobility. I saw Frank also sit up. His eyes were focused entirely on the Hatman, and an animalistic energy was starting to leak from him. The roid rage was cooking. I gripped the frying pan. The Hatman was in for a treat. "Hey, Hatman!" I yelled, my voice still thick but steady. "I brought my brother. He's pissed off, he's got a bat, and you know what? He can't feel pain." The Hatman recoiled and physically stumbled back 2 full paces. The shadowy fedora outline wobbling. I swear the little bitch looked afraid. This was going to be cathartic. Frank let out a roar, less a human scream and more the sound of a grizzly bear discovering its salmon dinner has been replaced by tofu. He launched himself off the bed. The battle of the astral plane was on. The Hatman, clearly an experienced fighter, was against panicked, immobile victims, was surprisingly agile. He dodged Frank's massive sweeping bat swing, which left a deep, echoing thud in the air. The entity retaliated with a rapid series of spectral body blows aimed at Frank's chest. The blows hit Frank and they looked brutal, like being repeatedly struck by a pneumatic hammer. Frank didn't even flinch. He just laughed, a manic, pain-free sound, and swung the bat again. This time, it connected with the Hatman's leg. The entity shrieked, a sound like grinding sandpaper, and dissolved momentarily before reforming a feet away.
"Jimmy! Get him!"
Frank bellowed. He was walking forward, winding up for another, even heavier swing. I charged from the side, lifting the cast iron frying pan high over my head. I aimed for the hat. The strike landed with a metallic clonk. The Hatman crumpled, falling to his knees. The creature was designed to be terrifying in its stillness, its silent judgment, especially since its victims couldn't normally move. Now, on the floor, it was just a shadow man getting beaten by two brothers, one of whom was a medical marvel and the other armed with cookware. Frank didn't hesitate. He brought the aluminum bat down in a sickening, repeated rhythm. Whack, whack, whack.
Where's your manners, huh?
Frank yelled, his voice ragged with sheer delight.
Where's the existential dread? All I'm feeling right now is awesome.
The Hatman tried to push himself up, his spectral form flickering, desperately trying to regain the dignity of his silhouette. I knelt down next to Frank, gripping my pan.
You stole 2 weeks of my sleep, you trenchcoat wearing freak!
I screamed, swinging the frying pan sideways and connecting squarely with the Hatman's midsection. The entity let out another horrible sound somewhere between a hiss and a whistle, and its outline shrank slightly, as if it was being compressed by sheer violent force. We kept at it. Frank used the bat to methodically crush the Hatman's limbs one by one, while I provided the chaotic, noisy distraction with the frying pan. It was pure, frantic catharsis. After what felt like an hour, but was probably only 3 minutes, the Hatman was reduced to a twitching, flattened blob of black shadow on my wooden floor. Frank, breathing heavily, stood over it, gripping the bat. He was untouched, save for a massive dent in the handle of the bat, which hadn't been there before.
Look at him,
Frank spat, nudging the shadow mass with the toe of his combat boot.
The big, scary Hatman. Get up! Fight back! I still can't feel anything. Hit me harder.
I lowered the frying pan, watching the black mass pulse faintly. I think he's done, Frank. I think we showed him that my apartment isn't a good place to annoy people. Frank finally lowered the bat, the rage receding just enough for a grin to return.
Yeah. This was a much better prescription than the regular pills the Flamingo stole. Let me know if you want to fight them too.
We stood there, two brothers armed with housing appliances and sporting goods, victorious over a spectral entity. The victory was glorious. The sense of accomplishment was immense. The silence in the room was finally back to normal. Then the first pale light of dawn crept through the window. The sleep paralysis, the effect of the meds, and the Hatman's presence all lifted simultaneously. The shadow mass vanished. The air returned to normal temperature. Frank and I were left standing in the middle of my bedroom, panting, one of us still wired on adrenaline and supplements, the other completely spent. I stumbled over to the clock. 6 a.m. My elation crashed into the cold reality of my responsibilities. Oh God, Frank, I groaned, running a hand through my messy hair. I looked at my brother, who was doing celebratory push-ups on one hand. I didn't sleep, and I have to be at work in 2 hours. Frank got back on his feet.
Yeah, you're a real tragedy, Jimmy. Look, man, go make some coffee or something before you collapse. I'll get out of your hair.
He clapped me once on the shoulder, firm enough to nearly topple me, then headed for the door.
Text me if that son of a bitch comes back,
he added casually, as if that were a normal sibling request. Then he left. I dragged myself to the kitchen on legs made of wet sand. The apartment was dim and still. I opened the cupboard, expecting salvation in the form of bitter, scalding caffeine, but all I found was an empty container lying on the side. 2 weeks of sleep paralysis and insomnia had drained the last of it without me noticing. I stared at the barn shelf for a long moment, then let out a tired, humorless breath. Of course, I muttered. Just my fucking luck.
So, what was your inspiration for the story? The idea for the story was in my draft for a while, but I don't exactly remember what the reason was. So I guess it's just one of those that beat the shit out of the Hatman. It's just kind of been sitting on the back burner for a long time. For the characters, the Hatman is inspired on the Hatman, and Jimmy was inspired by the main character of Tales from the Gas Station, since they're both kind of nonchalant about the weirdness. Frank, I've just thought that a roided up battle junkie would be cool. And Dr. Cole is based on Coltrane, but if he was a mad scientist. And the other questions, Mo just defers to his previous answers, which I will go back and read for those that weren't here for or didn't catch Mo's last reading. So for writing process, Mo says, I usually think of a general idea in my head, and then the climax and important scenes, and then the beginning and the end, and then the middle parts. I usually imagine the whole thing in my head as a movie after, then I outline and write in that same order. I go over it once or twice, make sure everything makes sense, and do final revisions. For your writing journey, how did your writing journey start? Well, there's not much here. I did some literature classes in high school and college. I started writing outside of it right before the first fan episode. Favorite author? Tolkien, easily. Favorite movies? Shawshank Redemption, Batman 2022, Shutter Island, Blade Runner 2049. For favorite media, mainly video games, the Dark Souls series, Xenoblade series, Devil May Cry, and a lot more. And where should folks go to support Mo? Go to my Reddit. I suppose that's where all my stories are.
I'm having some pretty conflicting feelings about it. We grew up in the same coastal town in Maine, probably never heard of it. Breakers Cove was tucked away deep. Its townfolk lived a quiet life. It was there I first met Tammy. She had silky golden locks that could make Rapunzel blush. She was the star of the track team and beloved by all. I was president of the Magic Club. It's a good thing for me that opposites attract. We chatted during our shared classes. She had a budding love for cheesy horror flicks, and we both loved hockey. From there, our unlikely friendship grew into puppy love. Senior year, I asked her to prom, and she rolled her eyes at me and punched me in the arm as if to say, "Why even ask? Of course I'm going with you." She had this navy blue dress and I wore a matching tux. It was an incredible night. She took the lead when we danced and giggled every time I fumbled. But she stood by me anyway. What a gal. I thought the night would end with the two of us riding away in my mom's station wagon and hanging out by the beach. But when we left the bedazzled auditorium and I looked into her gorgeous lemon eyes, I noticed. Well, to start with her eyes, they were usually hazel with a hint of lime green. At the time, I thought it was a trick of the light. Her eyes flashed an angry yellow at me. She wasn't even looking at me, she was looking past me, upwards to the sky. "Everything okay, Tammy?" I asked, her arm around her waist. She slid out from my grasp, avoiding my worried gaze. "It's fine. Let's call it a night. I forgot I had to help my mom with something," she said, her voice low and husky. I stared at her dumbfounded. We were just outside in the school parking lot. Most couples had decided to leave early. "But we were gonna head down to the beach. Meet Brad and the guys," I whined. Embarrassingly, I might add. In my defense, who wants to be the guy whose date ditches them at the dance? She pulled away from me and started moving in stride, her eyes flickering to the sky. "Really sorry, Jay. I'll make it up to you. I had a really fun time." She was halfway across the lot now. I could barely hear what she was saying as she was sprinting away like her life depended on it. She said something about texting me in the morning and we'd get lunch. I was a little hurt by the sudden departure, especially since she pretty much ran off into the night like a loon. I leaned against the station wagon and looked up at the starry night. The pale light of the pregnant moon shone down on me. In the distant woodlands, a wolf cried out to it. Almost sounded like it was mocking me. Of course, we talked about it and her mom explained to me she had conscripted her assistants and forgot to tell me. Belladonna might have been a beautiful woman in her youth, but her face was sunken and her eyes beady and cold. There was a silver strip in her dolled up hair that made her look like a skunk. Maybe that's why she smoked so much, to conceal the smell with rancid tobacco. She has never liked me, and the feeling was mutual. I remember the first time I went to Tammy's place. Her trailer was tucked away in the back of the commune. A lot of dusty plants and exotic-looking weeds strewn about. They had a makeshift porch with bundles of hair and herbs strung together hanging from the rafters. Tammy must have noticed the puzzled look I had and gently explained. Ma's really into alternative medicine. It sounded like a half-truth, but I didn't push it. I'm not one to complain about crazy relatives after all. Belladonna had swung open the ratty front door, crumbling cigarette in her hand, still smoking. She wore this extravagant dress, like she had just walked out of a Renaissance painting of a carnival. She had golden hoop earrings that looked like you could hula hoop with. She eyed me, disinterest spanning on her face. Finally, she had motioned towards me with her smoke-laden talons. "Oh yes, so this is the distraction." It was all downhill from there. Meeting my family didn't go any better. My parents acted nice on the surface, but I could tell their disdain from their judgmental looks and hushed conversations. My grandfather didn't even try to hide his hatred of Tammy, and on some level I admire that honestly. Once we were watching a movie in the living room, some god-awful thing we could both laugh at. She was next to me, head on my shoulder, as she giggled at the carnage on screen. "Watch, Jay, this guy's about to go into the basement." She pointed at the screen with glee. "Well, he's dumb. You wouldn't catch me going in there." "Not even if I went first?" she teased. "Your funeral, babe," I had replied, and was met with a playful slap on the arm. That's when grandfather hobbled in, his head still clinging to the last vestige of his youth. He pointed a frail, bony finger at her and started babbling dementia at her. "Get that mangy, flea-bitten trash off of my couch this instant. My God, a grandson of mine associating with the likes of you," he spat at her. Tammy rolled with the punches, and I told Granddad to piss off. We carried on with our affair, despite it feeling right out of Romeo and Juliet at times. The thing with prom bugged me though, and it wouldn't be the last time. Once or twice a month, she would disappear for a day or so. If our dates ran late, so would she. If our dates ran late, so would she with some flimsy excuse to get away. I grew used to it and would file away the hurt whenever she ditched me. I tried to pry once or twice about where she would go, but she would become cagey and drop the conversation. When we graduated high school and announced to our families we would be attending the same university in New Hampshire, we were met with apathy and worried looks. I suspect my parents were hoping this would just be a casual fling and hinted I should end it before I threw my whole life away on a whim. My grandfather had been uncharacteristically silent during their tirade and had pulled me aside after the fact. He said while he didn't approve, he acknowledged I was a man now and could make my own mistakes.
He sent me off with a case full of protection and told me to use it wisely. I hid that case away with the rest of my college-bound stuff and eventually set off. College was a blast, shaky and unknown at first, but we eventually settled into a routine. We spent breaks together just traveling and seeing the East Coast. We went to Bruins games, enjoyed a horror convention or two, just living the dream. She would still pull her disappearing acts at times. Sometimes we would be staying in a motel while traveling and she would sneak out of the bed at night and wander outside, almost trance-like. When I would confront her about it in the morning, she would shrug off my concern and say she was sleepwalking. Once or twice a month. During a full moon. I'm not blind or stupid, just in denial, I suppose. The tipping point came a few weeks ago. She just up and vanished without a trace. It was during the so-called blood moon, an event that seemed to come once in a lifetime. Really, it was just a slightly larger moon with a red tint, but for some it was a big deal. I tried texting her about it and was met with silence. Call after frantic text was ignored, and eventually I realized she wasn't going to call back. I was freaked out of my mind. I called everyone I could think of and no one had seen any trace of her. I called Belladonna and said her daughter was missing and she dismissed it. She will return unharmed. Worry not, Nebunesque. I have foreseen it in the eyes of the Crimson Luna. She was always saying crazy astrology shit like that. For my buns to hear her dismiss it like that, I wanted to tell her off, but I held my tongue and thanked her anyway. Tammy did turn up after a week at her mother's house. Belladonna shot a text at me that read, "She returns," and I hopped in my car and sped towards the cove. When I saw her, I didn't let her get a word in edgewise. I just embraced her and never let go. She claimed she had gone for a hike and gotten lost. Next thing she knew, she was at her mother's doorstep weeping. I pressed her for details and mentioned how the supermoon had came and went in her absence. Belladonna shot me a glance but said nothing as her secretive daughter bit her tongue. Then things got a little heated. "I'm glad you're okay, but you're always doing this. You vanish and then act like it's no big deal," I told her. She looked at me with a vacant look. "I'm sorry," she mumbled. "I just want to know you're safe. I mean, we should call the cops or something." "No police," Belladonna boomed. Now it was Tammy who shot her a look. "Look, I'm fine. Stop rocking the boat," she warned. "I'm not rocking the boat. I just want to know why my girlfriend is out in the middle of the woods for a week." "My business. You don't need to know every little detail, okay? Just drop it," she spat. I pressed further and it devolved into name-calling and shouting, something I am not very proud of. Belladonna tossed me out the door and I heard the two of them arguing in Romani or something like that. Eventually we made up. I apologized for acting like an ass and we moved past it. In theory, anyway. I just couldn't get it out of my mind. This secret she was badly hiding from me. It was like she was flaunting it right in my face, just daring me to confront her about it so she could deny it anyway. So last night, I did something I wasn't proud of. Last night was the full moon and I followed her. We had gone to the movies. Some rerun of an 80s cheddar cheese type. As we left the theater smelling like cheap popcorn and fizzy drinks, I checked my watch. It was almost 9:30. The moon was covered by waning clouds, yet I could feel its lunar gaze on us. Tammy fidgeted next to me and her eyes flashed yellow in the pale dark. "That was a fun movie," I said casually. "Very gory for a puppet movie," she remarked. "Well, if I saw one of that little pinhead things walking around, I'd just punt kick it," I boasted. "You'd try, then slip and fall right into it," she laughed. Her eyes flickered upward and her face grew red. "Let me guess.
You have to go real quick. Study for an exam or something? I said. She simply smiled at my full understanding and gave me a peck on the cheek. You're the best, Jay, she said as she hopped off with a skip. I loitered outside the dingy old theater for a moment. I watched her quickly go down the road out of the corner of my eye, the light from the marquee above quickly fading. I gave it a moment more and I gave silent chase. It was an odd feeling, stalking my own girlfriend. I stayed a few feet back and matched her quickened pace. She didn't seem to suspect I was tailing her, and why would she? I was dim, trustworthy Jason. Part of me tried to reason with my determined mind. This is wrong and a bit creepy. It's not too late to turn back, and she'll tell you when she's ready. The meek voice in my head pleaded, though it was quickly drowned by a booming, nasty little selfish thought. We've been dating for years now. She's been playing you for a fool. Probably laughs at you on our midnight walks. The vain voice in my head rambled on. I trudged ahead, Tammy's mane bouncing as she strolled. Eventually, we came to the edge of town, vendors packing up for the night already. There was a little trail that led into the forest. I knew it well. Sometimes Tammy would drag me on our morning runs, a ritual that she begun recently. She used to hate the wilderness, despised camping, and I always thought that was ironic, because sometimes when I saw her after her nightly strolls, she would have twigs and leaves clinging to her hair. Maybe I am dumb. She took the winding path with a leap, and I almost lost her to the hungry dark. My eyes took a second to adjust, and I followed her into the woods. The trees were mighty and still full of waning green. The moonlit path was clear at first, but soon swallowed up by shadows. Crickets filled the air, an accompanying symphony to my covert walk. I was careful not to step on any sort of sticks or foliage, lest it gave away my position. Tammy seemed to have no such qualms. She was trucking through like a woman on a mission. The air was crisp and cold that night, and the forest smelled like a new car. I blinked and Tammy vanished from the trail. Shit. Had she spotted me? Was the first thing that raced into my mind. I panicked and looked around, finally seeing a tall silhouette creeping into the bush. I followed as closely as I could, careful not to cut myself on any thorny bush. It was a pain for sure. Did she do this all the time? It reminded me of the hunting trips my dad and grandpa would drag me on when I was young, and granddad could still legally own a rifle. It was thrilling for them, those early mornings into grueling late evenings. I never much cared for it. But I won't fault the appeal. How dark it was then, I wouldn't mind donning a bright orange vest. Soon enough, I came across a small clearing. It was almost picturesque. Wildflowers bloomed across the ground, a variety of springing colors. Rays of moonlight rained down upon the solid earth, and I saw my girlfriend bathing in them. She was completely nude, save for a gold chain she was wearing around her neck. Her clothes were neatly folded in a pile. My heart sunk. The realization of what was happening seemed ludicrous. Then she opened her eyes, a solid yellow glow to them. Her body jerked upward, her hands contorting in pain. I could hear the cracks from my hidden bush. They rang out in a sickening crunch. Her body continued to contort and warp, her fingers twisted and grew, and the skin clinging to them like flayed canvas. She opened her mouth and a guttural scream emerged, the cries of a pained woman mixed with the hunger of a beast. She rolled around on the ground, clawing at her skin like she had a bad rash. She tore at herself, pulling piles of frayed flesh off of her. Every wound revealed fresh tissue that pulsated and breathed in the night air. I watched as her legs cracked under themselves, her ankles becoming animalistic. Hair sprouted all over her pink flesh, golden strands with a tint of crimson. Her hands were gnarled and imposing, nails like butcher's knives. Her limbs were slender yet powerful, and her chest heaved with each change. She didn't seem in pain, despite the horrific metamorphosis that was unfolding. I could see into her eyes. There was nothing in them but the wolf. Her mouth extended and cracked into a snapping snout. I saw 2 pairs of ravenous fangs slowly descend from her gums, bits of sanguine fluid spurting out. 2 pointed ears sprouted from her mane, sporting frilly strands of gold. She was covered in fur now, what was left of her humanity slipping off and falling into the earth with a splat. She sharpened her claws on the ground, growling and foaming as the final change took place. A nub formed at her hindquarters and grew about 2.5 feet. A long tail. It looked like you could club someone to death with it. Finally, she stood on her hind legs, panting from the thrill of the change. She threw her head into the sky and howled, that sound echoing across the oak giants. I stood frozen, taken back by this monstrous form the love of my life had taken. It was the most horrifying thing I had ever witnessed, yet also the most beautiful. I stepped back in awe of it. Snap. The twig rang off like a dinner bell. Tammy took notice immediately and sniffed in my direction. She stepped forward and her body was encased in shadow. I could only see the glow of her eyes and the pearly glisten of her rows of teeth. I could smell her breath from there, like dried meat that had been left in the sun. I could see bloody drool spool down from her quivering lips as they pursed themselves into a snarl. Before I knew it, she pounced at me and I turned tail and ran. I could hear her land with a thud behind me as she swept at the bushes with deranged fury. I kept running into the inky night, bulldozing my way past any obstacle. I could feel rouged thorns and branches try and cut into my knees, and I cursed myself for wearing shorts. Behind me, I could hear the snarling werewolf chase me. I didn't dare look back, lest I fall prey to the snapping maw. The forest had become a twisted labyrinth of wood and shadows. In my horrified state, every branch looked the same and every creeping rock an angry hindrance. All the while, Tammy was roaring and giving chase. She was keeping a steady distance. She could have easily caught up to me if she wanted. The wolf wanted to hunt, it seemed. Up ahead, I could barely make out the trail, and I bolted towards it. I jumped onto it, the perceived safety of civilization. I landed on both feet, a bit of dirt kicking up. I was met with silence then. Perhaps the beast had given up the chase. It was quiet, save my panicked breaths. That soothing silence did not last long, unfortunately, as the weird Tammy popped up like a jack-in-the-box. Before I could react, she was on me. I could feel her claws digging into my shoulders. A bit of spittle from her hungry jaws fell down on me. I could count every sharp tooth she had, and I was staring down the gullet of the beast. I noticed the gold chain still wrapped around her neck. Dangling in front of me was a tiny gold cross. I refused to die like this, to this ungodly beast. Yet, as I looked around me, there was nothing to do, and I was firmly pinned down. My heart was ready to explode out of my chest, and it was all I could do as to not cry out in fear and agony. She let out a thunderous growl as she brought her face down low, as if studying me. In those cold eyes, I saw a sliver of the woman I loved. Tammy, it's me," I said calmly, trying to reach her. She made a sharp bark, like she was taken aback. I watched as Tammy wrestled control back and the beast slowly released me. I scurried to my feet and put my hands out as the wolf stood there with a heavy pant. I swear it was scowling at me. Shouldn't follow. Oh.
Shouldn't follow.
It choked out to my disbelief. Before I could say another word, Tammy turned and leapt back into the bush. I heard her scamper away and I called out to her only to be met with a mournful howl. I limped back to my car, a searing pain in my shoulder. I had never been mauled by a werewolf before and I frankly don't recommend it. Eventually, I made my way back to the campus, attending to my wounds, and collapsed onto the bed in my private suite. I know that sounds callous, but what could I do? There was no talking to her like that. All I could do was await her return. When morning came, I felt the sun's warm embrace and a soft touch on my face. I opened my eyes to see Tammy sitting on my bedside, leaves still clinging to her hair. "I'm so sorry. Did I hurt you?" Her face was fixed on my hastily wrapped shoulder. I sat up, wincing as I did. "Just a scratch." She turned away, tears straining her eyes. "I'm so sorry for hurting you, for lying all those years. I didn't think you'd understand," she said, sadness weeping in her tone. "I've heard of crazier things than your werewolf. I've heard of crazier things than your girlfriend howling at the moon," I said as she sniffled. Couldn't see her face well. From the ways the corner of her cheeks twitched, I could tell she was holding back a grin. I sat up and wrapped a reassuring arm around her. "Look, we can get through this. Maybe there's a cure." At that, she pulled away. "There is no cure. This is who I've been, my entire life," she said. "It's gotten easier to suppress the change, but when it comes, I'm not myself. Not all the time, anyway." Took her hand to try and calm her. "You were in control, though. You didn't hurt me. You haven't hurt anyone, right?" I asked. "There were others." She looked away, ashamed of my reassuring gaze. "They weren't so lucky, I mean. They had it coming, but I remember it. The iron in my mouth, their hot flesh, how wonderful it tasted." She spoke. I was silent at that. "It happened a few weeks ago when I first..." She trailed off, collecting her thoughts. She explained the whole story to me. How she had been born afflicted, as she called, how her mother taught her all about the change. She told me of her encounter with the hunters up in the mountains, the pack she connected with. She told me she had ripped through them like butter in her escape, and the retribution she had helped rain down on them. All the while she was toying with the golden cross she had around her neck. I felt sick to my stomach hearing it all, watching her fiddle with the cross. I left the mountains soaked in their blood. I didn't know where to go, so I just went home. She finished the story as I sat there in silence. She looked at me with hope in her eyes for any sign I would understand. She took my hand and I am ashamed to admit I flinched at her touch. My mind kept flashing to the night before, the horrid beast I had been warned about my entire life. I didn't want to believe the stories my grandfather had told, yet the gash in my shoulder reminded me all too well. Finally I spoke. "I just wish you would have told me sooner, Tammy. I love you. Nothing will ever change that," I lied. "What you did, it wasn't your fault. We can get through this together." Her face brightened and went in for an embrace and wept on my injured shoulders. We sat there for a while in each other's arms. It was the least I could do, create one more tender memory for us. I'm writing this in my room, my grandfather's case on the desk next to me. I've been staring at its contents for hours now. It's a toolbox, you see, the instruments of my family trade. I never thought I would have real use for them. My family had tried to warn me, but I was too stubborn, blinded by love to the monster she was. Maybe those people she had slaughtered had it coming, but I wasn't one to judge. I was taught all human life is sacred and that no one should spill a man's blood, least of all a beast. I examined the case once more, and its pouches and journals, and in it is pouches and journals, and a hunting knife with a silver gleam, on the handle an emblem of a wolf being slain by a holy knight, our coat of arms. There is an inscription on it in some dead tongue. Roughly translated, it reads, "Humanity prevails against the scourge." I will do what I must in ridding the world of this blight on humanity. But I struggle to find the resolve, for every time I try, I picture Tammy's warm smile and the joyous sound of her laughter. I will do what I must and try and make it as painless as possible. I owe the beast that much. Firstly, thanks for picking Werewolf Girlfriend to begin with. Truly an honor to be up there with Hatman and SpongeBob and the rest. If you want to support more of my work... Oh, that's the last answer. If you want to support more of my work, you can check my author mega thread and my Reddit profile, which has all my stuff. And there is a link to my book on my profile if you so choose. Thanks again. Sorry I couldn't be here. That's alright, Caillou. And then what was the inspiration for the story? The inspiration came when I was writing a different werewolf story involving the backstory of my novel's antagonist. Tammy was a character in that, and I kinda liked her whole werewolf in denial thing she had going for her. So I decided to go into her story from both her perspective and Jay's. Jay being the first one. Okay. Okay. Wait, I can't see chat right now. Can I do this? Okay, I cannot see chat and read at the same time. I'm just gonna read the answers. Then it also says, I think her and a lot of my characters stem from the archetypes of goofy yet kinda badass heroes in horror movies I watched growing up, and just borderline B-movie cheese which I devour frequently. And then, what does your writing process look like? It's hard to pin down my writing process because I feel like it fluctuates frequently. Sometimes I'll set and plan out a story, other times a dumb idea just pops into my head and I vomit out a paragraph and spend the whole day just like daydreaming about how it will go. I do prefer that method though. And then how did your writing journey begin? My writing journey began in high school. My English teachers constantly stroked my ego and saying my horrible short stories were the second coming, and I thought, hot damn, I could make money cranking out this slop. In college, and I thought, okay. And my novel really brought me down to reality and made me focus more on telling good stories and paying closer attention to editing and word choice, which I think shows in every new post I do. At the end of the day, it's for the fun of the game and to put out something nice to brighten someone's day. I hope people get a kick out of the goofy shit I write and it makes them happy and inspires them to try their hand at making something goofy. Okay, then favorite movies, books, media, etc. Favorite movies are The Thing, Lighthouse, Dead Space Downfall, and Dead Space franchise as a whole. Even 3, honestly, that had a lot of charm to it despite its problems. But that's, I could go on for hours about Dead Space. Anyway, big horror movie guy, reading more horror books. Thought last one I read was Fantasyland, which was this awesome found footage style book about a group of people trapped in an amusement park during a hurricane. Good book. Go check it out. I've always had trouble with motivation. Outside of the deep pit of my depression, which I've thankfully crawled out of successfully, problem was never not doing stuff. That's the trick. Your brain always finds something new and awesome you could be doing. Some new, wild project to follow. But it's always smoke and mirrors. In the end, what you should have been pursuing, your real goals, they're always failed. It's never your fault. It's always an administrative mistake, an info you didn't have, a statistical anomaly. Oh, I was just unlucky. Excuses, excuses, excuses. One of life's biggest lessons is that you can never let anything up to change. You take every possible opportunity to ensure your plan will work. You check every possible outcome. You go out of your way to gather as much information as you want. Because that's just what life is. A bunch of random events that articulate between one another. So if you just bank it all on the outcome you manage to imagine, you're gonna get your teeth kicked in. You have to find all the possible outcomes and do everything in your power to have them fit your goal. Unfortunately, that's a lesson I still haven't learned to this day. Which is why when the Reaper greeted me, when life was slipping between my very fingers, all I could think of was, at least I won't have to worry about my future now. It all happened a couple hours ago, and looking back, I still don't understand all of it. After a day of rotting in bed, playing games, and genuinely being a nuisance to life itself, I decided to have an evening walk in the nearby glades, doing something actually meaningful with my life, you know? That meaning might be kind of weak, enjoying nature and whatnot, but to me that's a big leap already. The woods were dark, not the full shade of a night sky, but rather the sort of setting sun low light unique to autumn. Those times always feel weird, and in between of day and night, light and dark, life and earth. And strangely enough, I always find it hardest to see then. At night there's lampposts highlighting what you need to see, and you can always use your phone's flashlight. But in the dimmed light of evening, you can barely see details 20 feet in front of you. The seasonal fog not helping whatsoever. After only 20 minutes of walking, I felt a shiver run down my spine. At first I thought it was simply those random shudders you get sometimes, your nerves reminding themselves that you're still alive and all that jazz. But the feeling wouldn't go away. I remembered those videos explaining that humans can feel when they're being watched. Something to do with our ancestral need to not be hunted by nightly lurkers. Well, in that moment, it felt like those Neanderthals, I felt like those Neanderthals must have felt. Paranoid up the ass and constantly looking back and around me. Now, of course, I could have just called it there, turned around and went home, but that would be accepting defeat. Accepting that I was weaker than whatever irrational fear I was feeling at the moment. Accepting yet another defeat in my life. So I kept walking. With that, I knew then, maybe things would have gone differently. I noticed it about 5 blocks after first feeling the shiver. A dark blur, an unseen shadow. Barely perceptible, always slightly out of sight. That's how I noticed it. I could never quite see it, but if you looked closely enough, one could notice the absence of something where clearly there should be. I didn't panic, however. At this point, it was still just a shadow in the distance, and I was chalking it up to imagination. I first felt true fear 10 blocks later. The sun had already settled by then and twilight had set in, reducing visibility outside of the warm orange glow of the lampposts ever more. The shade was nowhere. I felt everything but relief. That thing, that shadow that had been following me everywhere this whole time was now just gone? And I was to believe that it had simply lost interest or found another target? Not me, buddy. I've spent more than enough wasting at my computer reading creepy stories and SCP entries to know that it is not how these things go. But before I could even tell my body to start running for it, the shadow appeared again. This time far closer, just behind a lamppost, hiding in its shadow only a couple feet in front of me. I was stunned in shocked silence. It was much more visible now. It was all wrong, all dark eyes and fleshy tendrils with no real shape to speak of. It just was, and it sure was real close. All at once, it was all over me. Literally. Tendrils were keeping me pinned to the ground. The suddenness of the impact stole the breath out of my lungs. Teeth and claws and bones were tearing and prodding at me, and hundreds of purple-red eyes were all fixated on me with an animalistic rage on them, glinting like the glow of long-dead stars, with just as much ancient knowledge and alien intelligence upon them. As my guts started spilling out and being filled with ever more tentacles and probes, I wasn't feeling scared anymore, despite the cold. No, what I felt was peace. And funnily though, excitement. Finally, something interesting, something unexpected happened to me. The only shame is that I won't be able to tell anyone about it. Well, I think the last bit of life fading from me. I hope if there's an afterlife, it's similar to Corbinic. That'd be rad as hell. That's all I want to say. That all happened, I want to say, 2 hours ago. Time has been very wonky since then. I woke up with a jolt inside my room, but not in my bed. I just gained consciousness standing on the floor, feeling the worst pain I've ever felt. It hurt all over and all at once. I didn't even know that was possible. You know, when your head hurts but you bang your toes so you don't feel the headache for a while? Well, that was not the case here, at all. I could feel every skin pore, every articulation, every fucking nerve ending, and all were on fire. I'm starting to feel a little better now. Everything still feels very goddamn sore, but I'm slowly regaining control and my thoughts are getting less scrambled as a result. This would be great news if a clone of me didn't just walk into my room and plopped right onto my bed like he owned the place. I recognized him instantly, although I'm unsure if I should even call it him. That thing that attacked me clearly stole my face and is now trying to steal my life. Great, just great. I would have jumped at him if not for the fact that even lifting my middle finger hurts like 1,000 hammers are all trying to break it. That, and I'd rather not redo the whole 1,000 tentacles ripping you apart thing. A couple more hours have passed. The pain is still so great I keep fading in and out of consciousness, still wholly unable to move. That is the positive though. At first the hurt was so great my mind wasn't even capable of shutting down. The sun is starting to rise now and I'm starting to feel extremely damn sleepy. Hopefully I feel better when I wake up. The light is already getting low. I can tell because it's coming from my left wall window. If it was morning, it'd be coming from the right wall. Fuck. How long did I sleep for? And I've been standing still the whole time? No one see me? I suppose if that imposter left for school, there'd be no reason for Dad to come in my room. Shit, I'll have to find a way to deal with it today. The internet has taught me one thing about those monsters is you cannot let them take root for long. I can move a bit now at least. That's an improvement. A slight inspection reveals that I'm wearing my bathrobe, as I typically do when staying home doing nothing all day.
I realize with horror when trying to pick up my coffee mug that my fingers pass right through it. Am I dead? Quickly sober up. Of course I'm fucking dead. That thing ate half of my body. Well, I'm somewhat glad. This confirms about half my theories about the afterlife. I've got a lot of experimenting to do with this shit show. With this shit now. Can I emit Akiva radiation? Can I move objects like a poltergeist? Can I create cold spots? My questioning is cut short as the door opens. He's back. Hey! I try shouting. He doesn't seem to flinch. Can he even see me? Isn't he supposed to be some kind of outer reality abomination? Shit, well, I'm not sure what to do now. He turned on my laptop. Peering behind his shoulder, I can see it's 7 no. I can see it's 5:54. He opens YouTube, starts watching a playthrough of a game I wanted to watch myself. After a couple minutes, he hasn't moved, wholly absorbed. I'm not gonna lie, I was too. I snap out of it though. It's 6 p.m. and I have to go make dinner for my family. How am I going to do that as a ghost? He has got to do it. He's still watching, completely oblivious to everything. I am not going to let that fuck have my parents think I've let myself go even more. Hey! Listen up, you fucking dumbass! Still no reaction. I feel white-hot anger bubble within me, threatening to explode. I was never that pathetic. I'm not going to let whatever that thing is let anyone think otherwise. You better listen up, you motherfucker! He jumps. Who just said that? He looks around the room, a cruel, curious look in his eyes. It's an expression I've had before, so it doesn't look alien, but I definitely wouldn't have reacted that way if a disembodied voice suddenly screamed in my ear. You have to go make dinner, you asshole! I won't have you have people think I'm any more lazy than I already was. I figured out how to carry my voice. Finally. It's something to do with contracting my thorax the right way and emitting enough heat. In fact, small sparks of flame are starting to randomly appear around me, and his eyes have instantly locked onto there. It's sort of unnerving seeing him sizing me up like a piece of meat despite not being able to see me. I remind myself that I have the upper hand. He doesn't seem to know what I am. In the back of my mind, I also make a small note of the possible nature of will-o-wisps and their relation to spectral energy radiation. So you're the original owner of that body then? He seems a lot more relaxed now. Can't say I've had that happen before, but you have to accept the loss and move on. Human, I'm in charge now. You're in charge? Don't make me laugh, buddy. You've been doing nothing but rotting in bed and watching YouTube. What's so high and mighty about you? My anger has reached its peak. I'm not thinking anymore. I instinctively replicate what he did to me yesterday. I leap on him, plunging my hands in his chest, though they pass right through. I can feel energy crackling in and out of me, like I'm nothing more than a lightning strike, existing only in this fleeting moment, only to be loud and bright and very, very destructive. And then he screams. His scream sounds nothing like a human. It sounds like a mix of a goat howling and the horrible screeching you hear when your earphones malfunction. It hurts me, but I can tell he hurts more, so I keep going. Whatever he is, whatever I am, I clearly have the upper hand at the moment. My victory ended, however. Whatever power or unholy magic I'd conjured up ran dry. I feel empty and cold, and the pain is back. The pain. Like that first night, I keep fading in and out of consciousness for what I think has been 4 days now. I come to, finally, still in the same spot. I look over and he's on my PC playing Warframe. Well, At least if he keeps my account topped up, that's good. You're back, he says. You can see me now? My voice feels dry, which is very weird considering I don't have vocal cords anymore, and it takes me a couple tries to realize. No, I don't know what type of ethereal realm you exist on, maggot. I've simply adjusted my neurological sensors to electromagnetic fields since what you did to me back then. I can't see you, but you're a whole electric storm over there. Ah, playing Warframe? Did you get to MR17 yet? He looks mildly annoyed. Yeah, whatever. Only crafted a couple other primes. What do you care anyways? You're dead. This doesn't affect you anymore. It's my account I've had since I was 14. This very much affects me still. How much have you been playing to get there so fast? I was never motivated for big grinds, but that speed is concerning. 10 hours every day, give or take. I was underestimating how much I'd take farming for relics, then opening the relics, then selling, then buying, etc. Whole can of worms, this game. You haven't been going to class? My voice is a single flat line. The hot anger I felt back then isn't here this time. Oh, I feel contempt, pure and clear. My thoughts are focused on all the ways I can make the fucker pay. You wouldn't have gone either. Too much snow. You know buses are shitty. He's so nonchalant about throwing his life away like that. Was I truly like that? Did I really find these stupid reasons to justify not doing even the bare minimum, only to follow fleeting interests? I collect myself. Listen, guy, this is my life you've taken. So you can destroy yourself all you want, but I will not have you destroy my image anymore. I'll be very simple. You go to class, you do what you need to do to keep my parents happy, you stay well adjusted, and I won't fry you. Are we clear? He looks at me, a look of surprised disbelief on his face. Then he smiles, a wicked grin of twisted amusement. Fine. I'll entertain you, maggot. I still don't know what you've become, but don't take you getting the drop on me the other day for anything other than a lucky shot. One day or the other, some bigger fish from the realm you're in will smell you and know that when that day comes, I'll be laughing and pissing on your grave. It's been about 3 months since that all transpired. Ever since then, I've grown accustomed to my new existence. The occasional zapping seems to have cost my humanity, seeing as I now sport talons instead of fingers. But hey, what can a ghost do with fingers anyway? We have a sort of queasy peace with my double. Since I successfully managed to leave the house, I follow him to school, giving him tips on social interactions. The guy may be some cosmic elder god or whatever, but he cannot take a hint. The only other event of note was when a guy came up to us when we were walking home one day. Though more specifically, he was walking and I was just drifting by. You, he said, looking right at me. I know what you are. Let me help you. Watch your tongue, mortal, the clone answered. Hey now, listen here, kids. My name is Ben Tenners. I'm an expert on this kind of stuff. I can help. He was cut short by my double grabbing him, letting me see those dreaded tendrils for the first time in so long. Seeing it from an outside perspective was kind of trippy, to let me tell you. Did you just fucking kill that guy, bro? They can all be lucky to be immortal like you, maggot.
First of all, I'd like to say Noah absolutely killed it. That was amazing. The tone was perfect. Absolutely.
Thank you. Toots McGoots.
Oh, thank you.
Toot. What a fun story, man. Thank you for writing that for us.
Thanks. Thank you. I had a ton of fun writing it.
Yeah, well, let's get into that then. So, what was your inspiration for the story?
Yes, that's actually a funny story. I was talking about my friend who kept saying I was corny, and I was saying, if I'm ever not corny, you'll know a skinwalker replaced me. And then I said, well, actually, if a skinwalker replaced me, I would tell them to still be corny. And that special interaction is what inspired the whole story, basically.
Wow. Well, thank you to your friend for partially inspiring
Yeah,
it then, I guess.
absolutely. Credits to them. Credits to them.
What about the characters? What was the inspiration for the characters?
So that's actually fun. For the Skinwalker specifically, or monster, my inspiration was the manga The Summer Hikaru Died. So with like the Eldritch vibes and the eyes and everything, that was sort of my inspiration for him. And also the Toxic Yaoi as well. It's sort of from there. Yeah.
Nice, man. It's just sometimes I'm just blown away by the level of the stories that we get, and it's just like every story is so unique. Like that's not a vibe that I've ever even heard of or considered. Toxic yaoi for I barely even know what those words mean. I think I googled it when you said it the first time, what yaoi means.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just appreciate it having something different. Can you talk a little bit about your writing process in general? Like if you more plan things out, you fly by the seat of your pants.
Yeah, absolutely. So typically what I would do is I get a crazy idea, like I had this time randomly stupid idea. I'll talk to it with a few people, see what their initial reaction is. Sometimes I change the concept a bit around because people give me feedback or they improve the idea upon themselves and I write off of that. And then once I have a solid basic concept, I'll go write down like just little what I like to do is before I start writing the full thing, I like to know exactly what the ending will be straight on. Sometimes I change it a little bit. Like here, for example, I knew from the get-go that they would be friends at the end. The tenors thing that was trapped on at the end, I'm sure you can tell, but I knew from the beginning that they would be friends. So yeah, I like to know what the ending will be. I like to have a couple ideas for specific scenes and then I just fill it in.
Fantastic. Uh, got a few more questions for you. All right, I lost my place.
Yeah, of course.
Um, so how did your writing journey begin? Like, what got you into writing?
Well, I would say writing short form horror stories specifically, it's definitely Creepcast itself. I was just so impressed. I was a fan of both Hunter and Isaiah before it started, and when it started, it was sort of like a Marvel moment for me, like Avengers. Like, oh my God, that's crazy! And just seeing all the talent of all these writers, I was just so inspired. And then the trigger for me was that damn Tales from the Gas Station, because it was I don't know. I've bought all four books after the episode. I've read them all in like a day or 2 days. I've reread them a couple times since then. And that's obviously what inspired me to write my bike shop story. So yeah,
The bike shop story is fun.
thank you.
It's very just like a fun and like everyday kind of nonchalant was the word I was looking for. Very like nonchalant type way to present stuff, which is fun.
Hmm.
Um, so I think you already talked about some of this a little bit, but if there's any others like favorite authors, movies, media, games is probably one.
Well, I mean, games obviously kind of kind of obvious in the story
Yeah.
we just heard. Uh, Movies, that's actually a really good question. I think what I love the most, and generally not horror specifically, I will say generally it's the Studio Ghibli movies. Those are so good. They're my whole
Oh yeah.
childhood. Yeah.
Tenors
Also,
is a
if
big
anyone
fanny.
knows, yeah, that's great. That's great. But yeah, also, if anyone knows Project Moon, have made three games: Lobotomy Corporation, Library of Ruina, and Libmus Company. They are a huge inspiration for my bike shop story. So that's also another thing.
Oh, cool. Heck yeah, man. And where should people go to support you if they want to show you love?
Well, obviously my Reddit. I've been posting all of my stuff there ever since I started. Like, like, I believe it was Vivi who said that I'm a no first publishing's right guy.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I also like to draw a little bit. So if you want to see my drawings, I do have an Unveil account. But yeah, that's about it.
I never believed in those stupid urban legends before. They were always just stupid internet memes that your friends would pass around and laugh about how stupid they were. Everything changed with this one though, and now I believe it. Sitting here, staring at a man's absolute unit of double bubble wide ass cheeks as they slowly get closer to me every time I blink. I can't close my eyes or else I hear clapping and then he gets a little bit closer. The longer my eyes are closed, the closer he gets. I can't get out of my bed because I am afraid that's what he's waiting for. The only thing I can do is sit here and try to type this up, in hopes that someone will see it when my internet comes back. I'm gonna try and get this done quick in between blinks. He's in my room now at the foot of my bed. So fucking scared right now. If you see this, please, for the love of everything, do not perform the Clapperman ritual. It started as a dare with my friends after we were laughing about some stupid internet memes and sharing creepypasta summoning rituals. We went down a long rabbit hole of ones we all knew and reminisced about. Bloody Mary, classic, the Midnight Game, icon, and the Three Kings. All of them we tried or at least heard of. But ChatGPT had a suggestion at the bottom of my screen about something I'd never seen before. The Clapperman. I told the guys about it and they looked confused. They'd never heard of the Clapperman before. I asked Chat to elaborate and it spat out a step-by-step guide on how to summon the Clapperman. It sounded like a joke and we laughed. I think that's the appeal. We didn't take it seriously. Now I'm staring down an extra wide chocolate stuffed honey bun dumpy that looks like it's ready to swallow me whole into a never-ending abyss of brown gravy and probably corn. Who knows? I read out the steps as we all roared with laughter at the ridiculous instructions that we had assumed ChatGPT just made up. Step 1. Put on a mix of Megan Thee Stallion and Nicki Minaj songs starting at midnight. No repeat songs. Step 2. At exactly 3 AM, the playlist needs to start playing Hips Don't Lie by Shakira. Step 3. As soon as the song ends, close your eyes and clap your hands 13 times while saying, Clapperman, Clapperman, ass so fat, close your eyes and hear that smack. Clapperman, Clapperman, right on track. Clapperman, Clapperman, watch your back. Step 4. Wait for the clapping sound to start. The Clapperman is in your house. When I finished, everyone was rolling on the ground laughing. David King was the first to suggest, in between fits of laughter, that we needed to try this out. I said it was stupid, but Kyle, last name, the leader of our group, dared us to do it or he'd ruin our lives. We all stopped laughing when he talked. Took the threat seriously now because Kyle wasn't one to be messed with, and we all knew it. He was the coolest guy in school, not even the teachers messed with him when he got a weird feeling. We all made a pact to be the first ones to film the ritual and post it on TikTok to start the trend. One by one though, they all fell through on the first 2 steps.
Most of them either didn't think it took that long to put together a 3-hour playlist or mistimed the start of Hips Don't Lie. I had a playlist on my Apple Music pretty much ready to go though. Looks like my love of fat asses was the death of me. My ex was right. I succeeded in every single step. It's getting hard not to blink, staring at my screen, typing this all out. I'm a dead man. He's so fucking close and my eyes are starting to water already. Last words, gotta think fast. If you're reading this, Mom, you're still a bitch for taking my Xbox away when I was 9, for fighting Daniel Esperanza, for saying that Drake wasn't a legend. I love you, Kate Spade. I've always thought of John Legend as a father. Hot Pockets.
What was your inspiration for the story? Number 1, I love the crunchy taste of Benadryl. Number ampersand, bees don't belong inside of burritos. 2867 calories per serving, though. Number pi symbol. Do you think there's oil on the moon? Question mark. In all seriousness, I wanted to make Hunter into some kind of cryptid / creepypasta legend. And when he posted full cheeks on Instagram, it sent me into a 5-minute long giggle fit where my brain just went haywire with lore about a summoning ritual for a monster called the Clapper Man. It took 30 minutes to write. What was your inspiration for the characters? Hunter. One word. Concise answer for that one. Can you talk a little bit about your writing process in general? Usually plan. I like to come up with the concept of my story first and what I want it to be about. I typically think of an ending I want and how I want it to start. I'll spend a few days on my notes app putting together in different wickets I want to hit for scenes and fleshing out my character. Once that's finally done, I start writing, and then I'll read back through and hate everything about what I've just made, so I get someone else to look at it. How did your writing journey begin? When I was 8, I had a writing prompt in an English class to write a story based on a picture. I got an egg in a book, so I took it a little loosely and made a story about a cursed book that gets stolen, and a giant plant monster comes out to consume the soul of the person that stole the book, leaving a tree growing out of their corpse. It was garbage. I wrote shitty fan fictions and poetry about 10 years ago when standards were low for that kind of thing. Then because I hated my work, I stopped, and I've been on this hiatus ever since. Watching Hunter and Isaiah's stories really inspired me to write again. Comedy isn't my usual go-to. What are some of your favorite authors, movies, or media? Dana Terrence, Pendleton Ward, Lauren Faust, and Olin Rogers. I love storytellers that leave you with your emotions hanging by a thread. And where should people go to support you? Just here on Reddit. I'm still starting back up my writing journey.